we're back in the garden after 2 weeks. August is a tough time to leave a garden for sure when we have as many things going on in it as we do here. And we still have a group that's visiting in September. So normally we have the open garden event back in June, and then Steph and I can travel a bit after that. And if, you know, the annuals don't look all that great or something gets overdue for pruning or whatever, it's irrelevant kind of, because it's just her and I, and you know, we'll get to it when we get to it, right? But in this particular case, we do have a group coming, so we got to get in here and get a little bit of control over it. I've got Griffin here in the video. We went, normally when we travel in the, you can see the path has been eaten by annuals that we're going to have to prune, and Griffin's in the middle of that. Normally when we travel with the dogs. I mean, Griffin and Holly have always been with us, you know, until recently, obviously with Holly, always been with us in our travels, because it's been around the US or Canada or whatever. But this was our first time going to Europe with the intention of filming. And Griffin stayed with Stephanie's son, Miguel, who a lot of you met at the open garden. I think if you were here for the Saturday morning group was when he was helping us sell t-shirts and helping us here in the garden that morning. And he was super helpful and took Griffin for a couple of weeks. So he's been at summer camp. Griffin's been at summer camp. And we've been in Europe, and the garden has been eating itself. So it's not terrible. I think, you know, you know, there's a ton of color out here. We've come back in, and there's just butterflies and bees and hummingbirds and moths and everything we would want out here in the garden. So this is a success regardless of whether or not it looks like a little bit of control needs to be added to it, right? So and we do. We got to get these paths cleaned out. We've got a couple annuals we'll probably just take completely out, but we'll bounce around and show you some good things and a couple things that maybe are going in another direction in this video. I think we had talked about this sweet Summerlove Clemetus earlier this year, about the fact that it's been here for like 2.5 years and it's never done anything except for grow. We just never see any flowers on it at all. So it's time for it to go. We get that question all the time. Maybe a blower back here in the background that you can hear, because of course, why wouldn't somebody on a Wednesday morning in the middle of the morning spend the entire day blowing something? It could be raked in 5 minutes. Okay, enough of Jim venting about blowers. Verbena bonariensis seedling here. This is worldwide. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. If Verbena bonariensis has been planted, there are seed there, and they continue to come up. But normally, I mean, the way they grow, they really don't displace anything else, and the pollinators absolutely love it. But this one, since we left, came all the way up and started blooming. I don't think we had seen it before we had left. We usually pull a couple during the season, and a few others we'll just let nature take its course. But this Clemetus is time for it to go. It just does absolutely nothing. I can't figure out what's going on with that thing. We have a dwarf Styrex called Snowdrops, and it's supposed to be about this tall. It was this tall when it went in the ground, maybe this tall, and it's grown this much. But all of a sudden I got this while we were gone. And anytime you see something on your dwarf tree that does this all of a sudden, likely it's something below the graft. So this is a grafted Styrex. So this was, you know, this dwarf Styrex was a sport or some small piece off of another Styrex, and then it's been grafted. But see, down here at the bottom, there is the graft is right there, where this dwarf Styrex, I got mulch in this thing, this dwarf Styrex was grafted onto the rootstock down below it. And you can see two different pieces coming from below the graft. That is super problematic, because it's going to be way more vigorous than the upper part of the plant. Sometimes this will take multiple times cutting these things off in order to actually get rid of them. Look how big this is. This is what I'm talking about. If you don't get these things off of your dwarf plants in a hurry, they can absolutely just eat them and take over the plant, drain this of energy, really. I'm going to probably get a couple more pieces coming off of that. Hopefully I can get control of it in time. But look at how much that grew in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It was probably here already and was just blended in with the plant. And then after we left, it went up that high. So there's another thing. This Suntastic pink Ailia is a big time performer. We've got Radiance. So Radiance Ailia, which you guys have known I've talked about a long time. There's 3 of them over here. They're in full bloom. There's a bumblebee I see on them right now. They added 2 more to this series. So now they made a series out of it. So Radiance got added to the Suntastic series. So there's Suntastic Radiance. This is Suntastic Pink, and we have Suntastic Peach out at the road. This is my new favorite, Dwarf Ailia, right this minute. Look how good this thing's blooming. And the flowers are so showy on this variegation. Normally these kind of white flowers like this just kind of, they don't really show up on it, but for some reason the flowers are super showy on this one. You know, I guess it's maybe the red stems or that really, really dark green in the center of the leaf is making it pop a little bit more. But I do have some annuals invading it. And so this is the kind of thing we'll come back home and make sure we sculpt around any of our permanent plants and that they're not being damaged. But highly recommend that Ailia if you can find it. It's new, so it's probably going to be a minute before you see the other 2 new Suntastic ones available. The pink Filigree Japanese maple, this got just eaten in half by a deer last year. Right out here in the front garden. It was in a container. Bam, half of it gone one morning, just bit off right at the top. It's come back out beautifully. I really like this variety, but it's starting to get some crazy limbs that are way out from the plant, really. So I'm going to just trim those back in. I get these, when can I cut 1 single crazy limb off something or 2 crazy limbs off something? Questions? Whenever. These are not going to be impactful to this plant in any way. The kind of pruning I don't want to do is just, I wouldn't want to do heavy set pruning on it right now, like let's cut half of it off. Or I wouldn't want to expose any foliage. Like those branches were going out here. I wouldn't want to do any pruning off the top of it, so then the sunlight hitting those leaves below it would cause damage to it, potentially. So, but a couple limbs to rein it back in where I want it. Easy peasy. Another thing I got going on is on the dogwood, on the Chinese evergreen dogwood. We do have a few branches here and there now that are dying on it, and you know, I'll go through here and clean some of this up. That whole piece wasn't dying, but that part of it was. So I think the rest of that was gonna go. I'll get in here and clean this stuff up later, but I'll go through here and cut any dead or dying branches out of it. They're just here and there. No big deal. Hopefully no big deal. I say no big deal. I hope there's no big deal. But one thing I got is this weird growth. So I don't know what's going on with that. But I'll get down in here and cut that very vigorous limb coming from down low. It's got a very different growth on it. But look at all that. That's happened really quickly. And it's very much a different growth on it. So don't know what's going on with that. This thing's budded up and ready to bloom in the spring. Again, I got some cleanup to do. I'm just making piles while I run my mouth, but that already looks better. And I might come down in here, and there's a couple other branches that I may do the same thing with and start to limb this up just a bit off the ground. Because if I can get it limbed up off the ground a little bit, we can plant a couple things in here a little tighter to it than we currently do. So the Hedechium or ginger is blooming. We're coming back into town and it's blooming. This orange one is blooming. The other one back here is kind of a whitish yellow color. That one we got from Ram Ram Giberson gave us that one. This one was given to us by Bobby Green, and he's the breeder for all the October Magic series of camellias that we have. A lot of Bobby's breeding in this garden, actually. In fact, there's a magnolia kind of buried behind this ginger right now back over here that's his as well. But he dug this out with a shovel, and we put it in a bag, basically no soil on it, brought it home and stuck it in here, and boy, it has performed well in this corner, and we love it because it's just such good structure here in the corner, and then it gets out of the way in the winter. I know some people don't like things to die back in the winter, but sometimes it's nice for things to clean themselves up a little bit, and we can kind of rein it back in just a little bit because it does spread by rhizome down at the base. You can see that it, how it spreads as it goes. When we had the open garden event, a lot of people thought we were growing corn. So it's not until now, mid to late summer, before you see that it is in fact not corn, and it's actually ginger. These flowers are so complex and so interesting individually on these stems. One of my favorites. One of the interesting things, and you'll see this in the content coming up from our trip to Europe and to the Netherlands, was all of Danny Werner's incredible Cerseus breeding is all over the world now. And this is Garden Gems Emerald, and we have Garden Gems Amethyst. There's also a gold version of this coming, or a chartreuse version of this coming, and others. I won't do the full spoiler, but look how the leaves are arranged on these. It's unbelievable. But not only did we see these being grown in some numbers over in the Netherlands, we virtually every nursery we went in that grew trees had a few of these on hand where they were trialing them. So they were at a minimum, almost every nursery we went into was at least looking at them to think about growing them in the future. So I think these are going to be wildly popular. We're calling this a dwarf, but it's gotten up here to 7.5 feet or so already. So it does have some hybrid vigor in it that, I don't know, haven't really decided yet. Am I going to address this as limbing it up off the ground and using the space that's underneath it, which is our normal go-to? Or do I do a little bit of top pruning on this and keep it a little more shrub-like? I think either is in play here. And the beauty of this thing is how much it bloomed. I was really surprised because some of these other hybrid redbuds, to me, they just lose some flower power. But this one does not lose any flower power. Well, the Vitex is eating the path again. This Vitex is what we would call just completely out of control at this point. It's coming down. Well, we've kind of decided we've spent 4 years with this thing now, and it's the pollinator's favorite plant in here. So it's probably that is a little, bumblebees favorite. I shouldn't say all pollinators. It's really just bumblebees based on it. We may come in here with another Vitex that we can limb up a little easier than this one. This one has this weird, it has a spreading habit. It'd be better as a shrub than it is as a limbed up tree. So I just kind of picked the wrong Vitex. And what happened while we were gone was I got in a question in one of the Q&A videos about Vitex. Was our Vitex still blooming? And I had said in that video, yes, but it kind of goes through a down cycle. So it comes into full bloom about the 1st of July, somewhere in there. I think maybe during the open garden, it had a lot of flowers on it, but mainly 4th of July. Think about this thing peak. And then it slows down a minute, and then it puts on this incredible burst of growth. Like while we were gone, 2 feet of growth, and comes back into flower again. And it's back in 80% full flower, something like that. And every single one of these branches is thinking about budding up and blooming. So again, it does this, whereas crepe myrtles do this and then kind of wind down. This will do kind of this during the summertime, where it'll have its ups and downs. Let's continue into the back garden. See the swallowtail on the Clarendin. We keep talking about this Clarendin, and when we were in, what city were we in that had the Clarendin collection? Was that Ghent? That garden in Ghent, I think. They had Clarendin are mostly tropical. Most of the species are tropical. But there are a couple that we can grow up here into like zone 8. But then they had a collection. You see all these swallowtails around the Asian plant. We have all of these other options out here for them. If they're picking something, it's always that thing. It does have the blue. Okay, so get in here a little closer stuff. They can see this blue fruit now, which is kind of wild. Okay, he's doing his thing. Actually, I'll just break it off. I'm gonna let this, okay. He's done with that one. But so, let's see. Look at that. Isn't that a crazy color? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. That is a crazy color blue, isn't it? So it starts off with the white flower, which you just saw the butterfly on. And then down inside that calyx, the calyx starts to turn this reddish color, so it looks like it continues to flower. And then that's where that seed is set. Isn't that cool? unfortunately, mildly invasive here in our area. That's what I'd have to say. Really hard to make a decision to take a plant like this out that's covered in native pollinators all day long. There's a seedling of it right there. So again, we'll see a seedling here or there in the garden, and there's probably one right there. If I hadn't left that on it, this one would have probably come up in the future. You can see some of the celosia we have back here has fallen over while we were gone. We had big time thunderstorms while we were gone. In fact, Raleigh had significant flooding in areas while we were gone. We were looking at photos of our city. Had coffee with someone this morning who's a plumber and told me he had been to houses that were flooded and all kinds of there was like three consecutive days of rain, right after we had left, and the wind has definitely blown some of ours is far lower problem than other people experienced. Lucky for us, we didn't come home to any significant damage, but there are perennials and annuals laying about. Our goldenrod here is trying to lean over. We started this as a perennial border this year with some dahlias mixed in here that the rabbits have been unfortunately munching on. But these are going to be all taller growing perennials. There's Amsonia and Salvia and goldenrod, and we're going to let some taller growing vigorous annuals come up in here every year and develop this. In the future, once this is about a 6 foot deep, tall perennial border like this, they're able to kind of hold themselves up a bit. They're able to deal with this a little bit more. This year, with one standing here and one standing there, a lot of them toppled over. No big deal. They're going to come back. This will just come back from seed. The celosia will just come back from seed, but all of these other perennials, they're going to die back to the ground anyway. They're still flowering, laying on the ground, and the pollinators don't care whether they're laying on the ground. They will not judge your garden as long as they have flowers to be on. They're not going to judge whether that's laying on the side or standing up. So you're okay in their eye. The autumn lily, Encore Azalea, is coming into flower in August. Sometimes these things with Encore Azaleas will surprise you at the timing, but this one is budded up and coming into flower. Autumn lily will have white flowers on it, but the occasional purple stripe in them, which is kind of pretty interesting. I don't know what makes that. Here's one that's solid white, and here's one with a little fleck of purple in it. Oh, here's another one, stuff right there. Look at that. That's what you'll get. I really like this. Really like this variety. It's kind of a mid-size one. This is a transition area over here this year. We rearranged a lot here. We took out a butterfly bush here, moved a Japanese maple forward, planted an oak leaf hydrangea that a deer enjoyed, camellia back here, which is looking pretty good, but this has been a transition space this year. Hopefully next year it'll start to, I'm gonna make a couple more changes back here as well, but I'll also say that this year has been interesting in the combination of heat. Having some things overwatered at times and underwatered at other times, definitely seems to have it feels like it's moved fall up a bit on some things where we're seeing fall color. We were in Europe seeing fall color way early because they are really dry. In the places we were at, it had been, I think we had heard it'd been like 5 months since they've had rainfall in parts of the UK, so that definitely moves fall up a bit, and it makes it seem like your plants are going to sleep much earlier than they normally are. So I do see a little more leaf spot issues. I see hosta that just have not held up to that summer at all, and just overall. So I think if you're judging your garden on this year, I would not, because it's just overall, I think everything looks a bit tough in comparison. There are some things out here that just literally are mint. They're just perfect. Coming back home, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good that plant is right now. But then there's a portion of it that I'm like, man, just wasn't a good year. Just wasn't a good year for our tomato crop is down this year for sure. We've got tomatoes. And our cucumber crop was fantastic early, and then our pepper crop, not quite as good. And then I can see it in our other annuals, our flowering annuals and other things as well. Where I think if you were here for the open garden, you'd think I'm way over judging it because we had it just kind of peak at that point. But since then, with some 100-degree heat, we've probably had, I don't know how many 100-degree plus days, Fahrenheit days we've had since then. But it's taken its toll on the garden. overall. There's no question about it. And so, you know, don't let that don't let that deter you. The plants are still, they're still rooting in, they're still getting established in your garden. They're still you're still building resilience. You know, the mulching that you've done and all the work that you've done, you're building resilience, hopefully, that will, you know, prevent the dips and dives, you know, that you could see year to year if your garden isn't resilient, if it doesn't have organic material to work with, and, you know, earthworms and other fungi and bacteria and all those things, all those living organisms in the soil. You know, as those things happen, your garden will become more resilient in time. But it can be discouraging at times too. But here's the thing: we left for 2 weeks, peak summer. First week it flooded, second week it didn't rain at all. And we've come home, and overall, you know, I'm gonna give it, if we'd have been here, it'd have looked a little better. We would have done a little bit more pruning. Steph did some pruning before we left and opened up paths and things. But that rain and wind, you know, kind of laid things back in on themselves a little bit. So we're gonna do a little bit of pruning, got another visitation coming from some folks. And, you know, I think it will look okay by the time folks are coming in. I don't think they'll be disappointed coming here. You know, it doesn't look bad. I don't want to make it sound like the garden looks bad, but I am saying that as we traveled, and we've done a lot of traveling this year and last year into places, that gardens, there's some resistance in place. If you get long periods of dry times and long periods of super hot times and abnormal heat and abnormal cold, it just feels like that can accumulate on some gardens in some spaces and really kind of be discouraging. But stay on top of soil building, because that is the long-term way to build resilience in the garden. So we're back in the garden. There'll be some content coming from here, and we have probably maybe as many as a dozen videos. And as you're watching this, there will already be a video up from Iceland. And I think tomorrow's video after this one will be from Amsterdam. Thanks for watching.